Okay, this is Infinite Gang, Neo Mode Gucci Flip. We are live here. It is 10/30/2023. Phones are open 505 349 0420. Also want to say hello to those of you over at Rockfin. We are live on Rockfin. Sent out a blast, so the penguin signal should be viewable. Just look up above. It should be appearing there in the ionosphere. Just look for the beak. Joined by 737, Rob Files, Osher06. Okay, I got some great news for everyone tonight. No, actually, it's not great news. Shani Luke is dead. First she was dead, then she was alive. Now not only is she dead, but she's decapitated and dead. Shani Luke dead at 22, body of German tattooist found 3 weeks after Hamas kidnapping as heartbroken mom speaks out. Now notice this, 3 weeks, dead at 22, little skull and bonesy up in here. Obviously it's fake. Look, if there's any part of it that's fake, it's all fake. It's literally like that. This isn't a mix. Some people are like, oh, it's a mix of real and fake. No, it's not. They just want to maintain that fight or flight response. They want to feel safe. They don't want to relax too much and just, get a little too comfortable with the popcorn. They want to hold on to that ammunition. And I'm like, that ammunition's a waste. Honestly, you're better off with the perspective we take. Ataraxia. All right, let's see what we have here. We're on the precipice of Halloween. All Hallows Eve, major occult holiday. And people are replaying this from a few years ago. Inexplicably, Donald Trump was on stage, and on Halloween, he kept on chanting for the people at the venue to shut the lights off. Let me play this clip because people are replaying it right now, just in light of the current tone.
Ready? Turn off the lights! Turn off the lights! Turn off the lights! Turn them off!
Now that makes no sense at all. Tyrone McCloskey says I joined 1 minute 13 seconds into the show. Yep, it's their magic number, 113. In fact, I was just watching a video on X about Pixar films and how they all encode the number 113. And how it seems to connect to this adrenochrome concept. Although I think Wall-E, and we've discussed Wall-E at length, Wall-E sums up the big picture and it explains the 311113 as a code for the end of the world when the atmosphere is no longer breathable. Directive 113 in Wall-E means abandoned ship. And that's when they get on the space arcs and they leave the Earth until the robots can clean up our mess and make it habitable again. They send a robot down from the ark. It looks just like a dove, and it finds a plant and brings it back to the ship, just like in the Bible, just like Noah's Ark, only it's a space ark. Joined by Thirst for Truth, Maddie33, Zin Valis, Bilkis42, Mom with Sons. All right, we have a good number of people. Frank Mirror here with the popcorn. 27 in just one channel alone. You can also, like I said, you can join us on Rockfin. We almost have 3,000 subs there. So I'm doing the live streams on Rockfin, and it's free. You don't have to be a paid member there. We have to support the platforms that aren't kowtowing to the terms of service established by the WEF and all the sensitive snowflake. This is the snowflake world order. If you want real power, you just got to be really sensitive. You just got to be a crier. Tears have real currency here. Based David Packman, one step too far, has joined us. Awesome, thank you for joining. Phones are open, by the way. If you have anything to say, it's 505 349 0420. Okay, now listen to this. In the Trackdown episode, End of the World, the character who is named Trump, the con man, and if you remember this, Trackdown is a bit of predictive programming that included Donald Trump before there was a Donald Trump, really. I mean, he was 12 at the time. Fascinating story here, though, because this Western, a TV show called Trackdown, directed by a guy named Donald, by the way, Donald McDougall. Well, it has this con man roll into town, he promises to protect the people from a cosmic threat, like build a wall because the alien type stuff. He gets driven out of town. He's a snake oil salesman, but he manages to cause a huge stir. Anyway, that came out in May of 1958. And the day after, I think it was like May 10th, um, May 9th and May 10th, there's another episode from a different show that also includes a Trump, but it has the same date, and it's Quantum Leap, where there's a 12-year-old Donald Trump, 1958, appropriately aged, in the back of a taxi cab. And again, this is just examples here of how the predictive programming with Donald Trump goes way back. That this is a role, it's like a suit that he put on. That the Back to the Future series includes Trump consciously. That Biff Tannen is Trump is a huge deal considering how much of that movie contains predictive programming for, well, 9/11, in addition to 2020. But anyway, that show Trackdown, and most of you are probably familiar with it. I should probably play it. I should probably play a clip from it for those of you who haven't heard it, but the episode is called End of the World. Now, the follow-up episode, and again, End of the World, came out May 9th, 1958. The Quantum Leap episode with the 12-year-old Trump is set on May 10th, 1958. Not a coincidence. But anyway, the follow-up episode, and this was found by Michael in Truth, is called The Brothers, and it's about twin brothers. So this is getting kind of interesting here, considering in the Trackdown episode he's killed by a Texas Ranger, and now we have this connection here with the twins, which is a recurring theme with Trump and even tying into the Twin Towers. And now we have the World Series game popping up right now at this time, and it's game 119. Very 9/11-y, considering George W. Bush threw the first pitch, as he threw the first pitch for the first game post 9/11. So there's a lot of interesting stuff here surrounding Trump, more predictive programming. Unbelievable. Yeah, let me pull up that other episode, Quantum Leap, and the episode is called It's a Wonderful Life, and it includes, at the very beginning, It's a Wonderful Leap. It's a Wonderful Leap, May 10th, 1958. A New York cab driver, Sam, has to win a contest to get his own taxi medallion. And in this episode, you have a young Donald Trump. So it's just noteworthy here that this episode, a young Donald Trump appears with his father, Fred. It's noteworthy that Donald Trump appears in an episode dated the day after Trackdown, which is clearly about a grown-up Donald Trump. Trackdown came out in 58. 58 is a very interesting number if you look at how it relates to Donald Trump's character. 58 years later, he becomes president. 58 stories in his building. There was 1958 and 1985 references throughout Back to the Future, but you can find many examples here. Donald Trump is entirely fictional. For those people who still follow him and think, oh, he's rogue and they don't know what he's going to do next, and he's not a politician, he's just a businessman. He's overturning the apple cart. No, he's not. Get off the hopium. It's worse than blue pills. Alan Smith says, say, Tim, whatever happened to the corny mayor of Minneapolis when the George Floyd thing happened? Oh, which corny mayor is that? There's a lot of them. Joined by Shannon Jones. Yeah, I'm assuming a lot of you here are here because of the text alerts. So I want to say thanks to those of you who join at Patreon and the other sites, because that's all going into maintaining and expanding this channel. And things are getting where I want them to be. For example, we have the books Auto Hoaxology 101 shipping out right now. And I'm presently working on IPS Insider, which the first issue will be purchased with everything that, pretty much whatever I can invest into it from the Patreon. So if you join Patreon, or if you want to, anywhere from $1, there's $5, maybe some more, but the whole point of it is you get live stream notifications, you have all of the archives, and you never miss anything. But again, I'm going to be introducing a tabloid here in the next probably a week. We'll have it within a week. It exists in digital form right now. I'm just doing the editing. The IPS Inciter, INCITER. And I'll explain in the introduction the first letter from the editor in chief, that'd be me, what it means, insider. Because there's multiple meanings, and it's about the phonetic resemblance to insider. Because we are playing with fire, and we're playing with insider information. And ultimately, it's about what insights can be gleaned from this banned information and the effects it can have in the real world. So the insider is meant to be thought-provoking. And I'm going to be distributing it through anyone who carries a press pass. And if you're a press pass carrier, you're going to be receiving a new one with your stack of freemium versions of the IPS Insider. Everything's been updated. That's kind of my point. And it'll be a monthly publication. All right, joined by Diana South from DLive. Thank you for joining. We're on DLive, YouTube, Twitch, Rofkin, Odyssey, and on X. Okay, let's continue here. On October the 4th, Marina Abramovich released a video, "The Artist is Present." In this video, Marina reminisces to when her mother dressed her as the devil at the age of 4 for Halloween. She believes her mother did it to mark her life, and she chose to wear devil horns to express one of the versions of herself.
My mother dressed me as a devil when I was 4 years old for the little party. My first party ever. Everybody was dressed very happy.
Now, I'm not all that intimidated by this person. I think it's mostly QAnon hype. But she does ritualize cannibalism and smear body fluids on the wall and calls it art. But I want to point out that Marina Abramovich makes the case that maybe adrenochrome really is some kind of a fountain of youth. I mean, I believe she's like 76 in this picture, but you couldn't tell. It's Marina Abramovich, spirit cooker for the elite. Okay, moving forward. Got a commenter asking, can anyone explain how this is possible? And this is D-Bon J 1999 about the moon. He says, synchronous rotation or tidal locking. That the moon revolves around the Earth and it revolves on its axis every 27 days, but we only see one face. Interesting little conundrum there. I find it perplexing. Maybe you don't, but the point of it is, you've got the tidally locked moon, so it's always facing us, but then it's also rotating, but we never see the other side because it's synchronous in its orbit. Yeah, it's a little bit of a mind bender, but nothing that can't be accomplished by the reality benders who operate through bending our news and really shaping everything. We are reality fluid. Speaking of reality fluid, here's 3 versions or 3 explanations, 3 interpretations of the death of Matthew Perry. I'll say death in quotes, we don't know. Mike Rothschild says there are numerous viral tweets suggesting Matthew Perry died from the COVID vaccine, but there are other viral tweets suggesting he was executed because he was about to reveal damaging information about child trafficking, and a third one, he was a child trafficker himself. I've heard a number of variations here. A lot of these, like here's one from Q Mum. Matthew Perry, female to male arrested, confessed, assets seized and executed. As he confessed and gave information, his reputation will be intact. So one of the primary narratives from the Q Club is that these celebrities have been caught red-handed, caught with adrenochrome, they're on video, and so they make a deal with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's like, look, we'll preserve your legacy, we will give you a fake death, but you got to give us all of your information. So that's one of their stories. Like they care so much about their legacy. Now here's another one. Did he agree to negotiate to preserve his legacy? Did he wear a boot? Did he end up in Gitmo? Did he test positive for COVID? Breaking news, Friends star Matthew Perry dead in a jacuzzi. Police say no foul play, but rumors are circulating he was killed because he was going to reveal the truth about Pedowood. It's from Matt Wallace. Anyway, this is all just hopium from the Q Club, all their different interpretations for this person's supposed death. But it does get interesting. There are some connections here that are undeniable and some ominous clues, which makes me think this is some kind of a story, a psyop, something to be unpacked. In fact, I was looking at some of the pictures here, the opening credits. where you have him in the fountain, spitting out water, and now he's under the water. And I'm wondering, this could be something. Things have been very 9/11-y lately. We had a 33-year-old fall into the reflecting pool at 9/11, and the water thing stands out to me. So I'm thinking maybe this could be foreshadowing the next 9/11 being a water-based attack, the Seattle attack we've been awaiting. Jake the Asshole says it's impossible. Try creating it with pool balls. You can't take two pool balls and spin one like the Earth and the other like the Moon and keep it always facing the other. Okay, we're talking about tidally locked and synchronous orbit. He's right. Here's another way to picture this. If you hold your cell phone out in front of you, so it's recording you and you're doing a selfie, and then you just spin around. Okay, now it is tidally locked. Your phone's face and your face are together. Now, try to rotate that phone over the course of 27 days, but somehow never see the back of it because of the way that you're turning. Yeah, I don't know if it actually works that way. I mean, I guess it does. Does any of it really work? Look, I don't believe in the standard model, and it is only something you can believe in. You don't know it. You haven't been there. You haven't verified it. You can't see the curve. You can't feel the motion of the Earth. It's just a lot of trust me, bro, and say. I saw it on the screen. Lean Dion says it's 21 years, 9 months, and 11 days since Chandler takes a bath. The same episode references 9/11 a couple of times. Exactly. 9/11 references, and I'm suggesting here that there could be a reference to the next 9/11. 9/11 is just code for an emergency, a major league psyop at this point. It doesn't specifically have to relate to that date. Again, scripted since 1994 that in 2023 Matthew Perry would drown. We have to be dealing with AI or super aliens. Humans can't do this. And this is just storyline 1. How many scripts are going on at this time? Now that's from Renaissance ATM. And I want to point out, this is the divine fallacy. I always advise people to stay away from this one, or just to recognize when you're doing it. Like, this is beyond my comprehension. Therefore, it's AI. I can't figure it out. Therefore, super aliens. You could look at your iPhone, and you can imagine if you had seen something like an iPhone, 20 years ago, it would have been alien technology. And you could say, I don't know how this works, therefore aliens. No, that's a bad argument. It's like if you're watching a magic show, and you can't figure out how he did every trick. Therefore, it's magic. Well, no. Therefore, it's a trick you have not figured out yet. Same thing with the psychological operations they show us on TV. I might not be able to tell you how they faked that particular stack of dead babies, but it doesn't mean, therefore, it's a stack of dead babies. It means I don't know the particulars of this trick. But I recognize I am at a magic show, and if you're only in your seat, you never get up, and you only look at what the magician tells you to look at, yeah, you're going to be in their show. Me and my friends, we wander around. We go backstage. We read their books and figure out how they do these tricks. Maddie33 says he was referring to himself as Matman. What's with the Batman reference? Exactly. Shout out to P Trippa 103. We at the IPS think tank appreciate the support. Keeps the signal going strong. It's kind of remarkable if you think about it that we have been on this track for years now, despite censorship. And I don't mean terms of service violations and private companies doing what they want to do. No, I'm talking about people that work within government working with big platforms to shut us down. For example, and specifically YouTube, where it's taken lawsuits to undo some of that damage, and it's not over yet. But we've only been able to maintain this because we haven't relied on any one platform, but we've relied, I think, on the content, the ideas, and not the rules, but the format of our think tank itself. And we've been rolling with this for years, and we've been advancing, we've been learning, we've been improving and networking, and it's not going to stop. So I'll say thanks everyone here who is contributing, whether it's just words, ideas, comments, or anything else. It's all going into the same thing. This is a project that's going to last. I'm planning on at least to do what needs to be done. It's going to take a lot of time. This is Agenda 2050. It's going to take us a little bit of time. Pete Trippa says, next coffee is on me. Thanks for keeping me sane, so to speak. Yeah, quite literally, if you think about it. And I've been doing a lot of research on this subject of mind control and alternate reality games. And recently I released a book called Media as Narcissistic Construct, just an ebook. But I think it's such an important idea that it had to be put out into an ebook. I thought, I got to go ahead and publish this and make these connections because this is just the start of it. But one of the main points is in the interpersonal relationships that are described as toxic, what happens to the person who is the target of what has been termed narcissistic abuse, but you could call it emotional abuse, whatever you want to call it. Gaslighting is just part of it. But what happens is in these dynamics, one person's perceptions are constantly being overridden. Their sense of self is being effaced because they are putting the other person first. Usually this involves enabling bad behaviors, could be drugs, could be a lot of things. But the point of it is that person enters into an alternate reality. They're cut off, they're isolated, and it does actually affect their ability to discern what is real or not without that primary person being their sole interpreter. And I'm suggesting that mass media itself, this ubiquitous presence, is monolithic, but I think that the presence itself is intrinsically narcissistic. And the consequence of that is that the populations are going to be infected with that mass narcissism. And that has the other result of creating the victims, the targets. So in other words, it's a very toxic presence, and it's by the definition of it is, I think, almost a schizoid affective disorder. When somebody is disconnected from reality, what else can you call it? Schiz means break. And I'm saying that the masses have been broken off from reality as much as any doomsday cult. Look at Heaven's Gate or QAnon. These are alternate realities. And you wouldn't look at a QAnoner who's waiting for JFK to come down on a UFO riding on a velociraptor and say, that person is sane. No, you would say he's relatively sane compared to his tribe, and they're all crazy the same way. But they're definitely not with objective reality. Nor is the massified mind, byproduct of multiple generations of hypermediation. Okay, continuing. Tom Anoid says, pretty good soul harvest this year. Oh, this year has been a major loosh fest. Save the Children, Maui Children, Dead Babies on the 33rd anniversary of Dead Babies. Just one thing after another, and then there's been the celebrity scandals. Whatever happened to Russell Brand? I bet he's happy about the Hamas attack on Israel. I mean, it's really taken the heat off of him. Okay, continuing. Maddie33 says, Matthew Perry wasn't very active on social media, and in the last 2 weeks he was pumping out posts. Yeah, apparently he wasn't active on X. I haven't checked his Instagram, but yeah, there are indications that some of his recent posts that seem to be a little foreshadowy were kind of maybe even part of this script. Lean Dion says, now it's baked babies in the oven, claims on X, Alex Jones must be salivating. Hey, I hadn't even thought about that. When he was talking about butchering his neighbors and feeding them to his daughters, he didn't mention what he'd be doing with babies. I could imagine possibly even another line of storable food items. You've got neighbor's ass jerky, and I don't know what they would do with the baked babies, but and I want to point out too, Alex Jones was salivating over eating his neighbors, and this was 6 weeks in. I mean, this guy's got mountains of storable food, and he's already thinking about eating his neighbors. Like, he's not going to touch his storable food items until he's eaten everybody else's first. That's actually smart. It's like you take your oil reserves and just pretend they're not there and then go take everybody else's oil first. It's just a power move. Yeah, baby back. Okay, let's see. Skill says U.S. is having a Hawaii moment not unlike 1957 Sputnik. Overly paranoid, witless, and wondering. Yeah, 10/4/1957, beginning of the space age. Sputnik goes into orbit, and that did kick off this new, in space, the Cold War became a little more serious. They won the space race, and this, of course, was repeated in 2020 when you had Russia winning the inner space race, the vaccine race. And they called that one Sputnik. It was Sputnik 5. Okay, continuing. We're looking at some clues that Matthew Perry's death is some kind of morbid theatrical psyop. Nathan says the actor-based reality is too complex for humans to be pulling the strings, in my opinion. Yeah, let me address this divine fallacy. The divine fallacy is a logical fallacy that occurs when someone assumes that a certain phenomenon must occur as the result of divine or supernatural force because they don't know how to explain it or because they can't believe this isn't the case. They also refer to this as God of the gaps. Like whatever they can't explain with science, they'll say God did it, therefore. No, it just means science hasn't reached an explanation yet. And the yet is important. It has to do with skepticism. My point of it is what Renaissance ATM needs to ask himself is this. What's more likely? Super aliens, AI, writing the news media, or what we already know, humans write the news media. But that they write it in a way that's not exactly day-to-day reportage, but they actually write it decades in advance. That's the only thing that makes sense. What we have done is I think, we have verified it is the case that we live in a news-bent reality. Reality benders, news benders. If you haven't seen News Benders, we premiered it a couple of months ago. I can give you a link here. Just look up News Benders 1968. It's on YouTube. A number of people have uploaded it. I believe I have as well. 30-minute theater, The Newsbenders. A short meeting between a senior TV newsman and a talented younger freelancer with some unexpected twists and turns. Short drama where they find out that the news is determined in advance. But this is literally the truth. This is how they do it. And they do write the news decades in advance. They're writing the history in advance. History is lies agreed upon. Conqueror writes the history. Yeah, why would they wait? Why would they give anybody any input? Okay, N2Deep says all the world is a stage. It's correct. You can't get off the grid. There is no going off the grid. Like they say, get out of the cities or go out into the woods and get your own plot of land and, sorry, you cannot quarantine from the alternate reality game of the world stage. Not physically. It's a mental exit. You can exit the world stage, the internalized construct that they've given us. You can reject it. You can reject their God constructs, their devil constructs. Their whole system is meant, to be something that we all share and we all agree upon. And that's the main thing. It's really based, I think, on maintaining a consensus that we can all believe in. And those of us who are non-believers are looked at as, spreaders of harmful misinformation. Newsbenders is good, Tim. If you look at the main shooter, don't forget to mention the NPR articles, the mass shootings that never were. Yes, good point. Always good to revisit this. This is what you would call accidental reportage. Like the journalists are there to basically spread propaganda, and they have their agendas. And many of them may feel like that they're actually reporting facts, and they're speaking truth to power, but that's naive. The school shootings that weren't is an article that came out in August of 2018, where they noted that in the spring, the U.S. Department of Education reported that in 2015-2016, 240 schools had school shootings. So if you just followed the news every day, you'd be like, wow, there's a school shooting every day. There's an epidemic of mass murder. Kids are dying everywhere. And if you have that cognitive bias and you're afraid of guns, you'll believe it. Kind of like how anti-vaxxers think that anybody that died vaxxed to death. Oh yeah, they died from the vax. Well, the fact of it is, the cognitive bias, the, I guess, just the conditioning led a lot of people to assume that this was real. So NPR is looking into it, not because they were skeptical, but they wanted to know how bad it was. NPR reached out to every one of those 240 schools and found out that more than 2/3 of the reported incidents didn't happen. They were only able to actually confirm 11 incidents. Only 11. And these incidents weren't even the mass shootings that we see on the news. We're talking about things that have been miscategorized that didn't involve a mass shooting at all. So the point of it is, if NPR hadn't pointed this out, it probably would have just flown under the radar. I don't think this is an accident. I don't think this is an oversight. I think this is systemic misreportage, and it's designed to basically, I think, bypass our filters because we're so inundated. It's like just throw more on there. We have 48 hours of news packed into every 24-hour news cycle. Most people can't handle it. They can't parse that, obviously. So what are they left to do? Just believe it. And a lot of people make the mistake of believing 100% of the news they didn't consume. Like they watch what they watch. Most they didn't watch. And it just kind of fills in the background. Like, well, if it wasn't true, somebody would have called it out. So all this stuff happened. Let me catch up. Now, you can't just catch up on what to believe. You can only catch up on what has been propagated. The main point of it is this. The uncertainty in school shooting numbers is the result of errors, for the most part. Most of the school leaders NPR reached had little idea of how shootings got recorded for their schools. So they're calling schools and they're like, how? How did this even get labeled as a place where a school shooting had happened? Jeff Davis, an assistant superintendent at Ventura Unified, said, I think someone pushed the wrong button. I've been here 30 years and I don't remember any shooting. We're in this weird vortex of what's on this screen and what reality is. Yeah. He reached this place where we're at, this weird vortex where there's this difference between what's on the screen and what is in reality. It's a discrepancy. In some cases, something may have happened, but not firearm discharge. Yeah, I recall the story about some student had chewed a Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun, and I think they had a school lockdown. Yeah, I actually have a picture of it here. Kind of looked like a gun, but it wasn't. Judge upholds suspension of the Pop-Tart gun kid. Pop-Tart suspension could be upheld. 7-year-old boy suspended for chewing his Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun. 3.5 years later, Pop-Tart gun suspension resolved. Should a 7-year-old be suspended for a Pop-Tart gun? I'm going to go ahead and play this clip.
Already a rectangle. I just kept on biting it, tore off the top of it, and it kind of looked like a gun, but it wasn't.
When his teacher saw his strawberry tart,
And she was pretty mad.
Okay, so the kid wasn't intentionally making it into a gun. It's just the way he bought it. And I think they have a picture of it here. The police must have taken it for evidence. There it is. Yeah, I think it's kind of ambiguous. Okay, let's continue here. Joined by Rome. Yeah, we do have a number of backup channels. Those are all simply redundancies. Join them if you like. The main one is Infinite Plane Society, but you'll notice I delete the videos every night. We have to. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Jim Fetzer says, Paul Craig Roberts figured it out. The Hamas-Israel war is an extension of 9/11 to complete the task of taking out 7 countries. They took out Libya, Iraq, but Syria and Iran remain. The plot, draw them into conflict with Israel so U.S. can finish the job. That's from Jim Fetzer. Okay, phones are open. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, good evening, Tim. How are you?
Very good. Just observing the world stage dramatics. How are you doing?
Doing great, thanks. I calling in to just pick your brain for a few things, and yeah, you're talking about the school shooting, so you're kind of running down a lot of stuff that has been on my mind, and I just feel like I thought it would be cool to call in and instead of texting in and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Israel stuff. They had similar school shooting, recordings where like children of dead parents in Gaza or something are like laughing. So I was like, oh my God, it's like the Sandy Hook kind of clips of the dad, laughing. So, but yeah, I like to share the NPR article of the shootings, the school shootings that never were, because I just like it when you share that, because it's grounded in a little bit more of like someone took their time to auto hoax, right, like in a mainstream media kind of way. They're like, okay, let's figure this out, let's see,
Yeah.
get to the bottom of this.
They never do this. The media
they came up
has,
empty-handed.
they've never fact check their own news. Like they report the news, but they never let's go and check and
Yeah.
make sure we reported the truth. And it was a first. So that's why it stuck out to me. That one was really a first. And
So
yeah,
yeah. Well, this is what's so interesting about 9/11 and things like these wars, like this, stuff that's going on in the Middle East again. Who's going to really question or dig down into the details of who's dying, like what city block was eliminated by a missile and so forth, and you're not. It's just, war is just so chaotic. And like the day of 9/11, it was just so chaotic and it was so massively staged that no one's going to question it. They're just going to kind of look at the news and take it as it is. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So
Yeah, in fact, I found these interesting quotes recently. George Orwell was writing about how he would read reports about where the war was really bad, and he'd be in these areas, and he'd be like, "It's not at all like what is being reported," and he'd find it was the same everywhere. And I think it's the same. And the fake ability is one thing, but also the fact that there's not a lot of real fact checking internally, and they got away with 240 mass shootings. You know how many people's opinions would have changed having read that? That's a significant thing. 204. It's like saying 240 terror attacks. Like that is something that will shape somebody's opinions,
oh yeah,
and
oh yeah.
it's beyond just reckless. To me, that's what you would call atrocity propaganda.
That article is actually has a couple layers that are really interesting. Like different counties and different towns report school shootings differently than others. Shouldn't it be all the same? Like, no, this is definitely different in this county. One kid brings like a cap gun to school, and then another kid actually brings like his grandfather's arsenal. So it's like those are categorized as like the same thing. It's like that's not that doesn't make any sense. So
Yes, yes.
um,
It's a good example though too of how if they throw everything at the wall, it just sticks unless somebody is there to call it out. And this is one where not even the people calling out the fake school shootings ever looked into these, but it took NPR, and they weren't doing it to discredit the news. They were doing it to build a case for banning guns, and look what they found. Like they accidentally stumbled
yeah.
on this, and I'm sure somebody must have gotten fired for that.
So it's one of the things that I actually have been meaning to ask you about. This NPR article just drilled it down and said, okay, well, maybe not all 240 were, really mass shootings or school shootings or whatever, but it's something like 1 to 10 of them actually were. But even then, Tim, does that mean, out of all the schools in the United States, probably like thousands, right? We're just like freaking out over like 10 of them or whatever. But even in some ways, say like even that's like too much. But then if we kind of enter into the IPS way of thinking, like those 10 are probably all like, disingenuous. They're all like kind of like to some degree staged, and that's my opinion. But I mean, I know it's like all the way with you, like it's all staged. But it's tough for me sometimes. But I mean, that I think they hit it like halfway. I think they make it staged, and then the rest kind of naturally. I know there's like the girls and the guys, like the students that are like, they're like laughing, like in front of like the news cameras and stuff like that. But
Well,
when they're interviewed during after. But like I think they do like maybe like half or maybe like 50% of this is like staged, and the rest is like, man, if you're like close by, you're like a neighbor, and you're like right across the street from the school, like, yeah, you're gonna have like a freaking crazy response to this, like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened in my neighborhood. Like, yeah,
oh sure.
what I mean?
They
I
lock
don't
down
know.
schools
I
all
don't
the
know.
time. Schools get locked down because they'll say there's a shooter
Yeah.
on the loose, and there's no way of knowing, but it does create that perception, and then the lockdowns become normalized. But with a 240, it could have been anything. Somebody, however the schools
Yeah.
misreported it. But the fact of it is, the regular news consumer will think that was 240 Sandy Hooks. That's what they take out of it.
You're right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, you brought up another point about, well, school shootings, but just shootings in general. For Maine, they did a lockdown, just like they did up here in Boston for the Boston bombing. The last time I heard that they locked down a whole neighborhood, outside of obviously 2020, because that was basically like the whole world. Somehow they convinced the whole world to do a lot of that. But Watertown, Massachusetts, like right after the Boston bombing, they thought the Tsarnaev brother had, I think there was like a shootout here in Watertown. It's almost like when you, back then it was like, I think it was 2013, like when it was happening, you like remember everything. But like now, like thinking back, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that happened here. The town of Watertown and like the surrounding areas were on lockdown. And that was kind of like, I think that a lot of people, I think I was listening to Alex Jones back in the day, that around that time, which is, I'm sorry to say, but I think he was saying like that's kind of like the beginning and like the direction that they want to take us, like that they can just on a whim flip a switch and like put us on a lockdown, which I
Right.
thought even then I was like, wow, this is like actually happening. Like they're like, no, I don't even think people in my town was probably like 10 or 20 miles away, and I don't even think we left the house because everyone's like, you're scared. It's like I don't know. It's like a weird thing.
It is.
It
Look,
really hits you.
that happened in Watertown, you mentioned, right? And so the Boston bombing suspect hides in the boat, and they have the big shootout there in the boat. And that was kind of called back with this main shooter because, of course, he escaped on a boat or on a jet ski. So they bring back elements,
I forgot you said that the other night.
but there's definitely something here. There's definitely something to getting getting people accustomed to locking down on more or less on a whim. And they've definitely advanced that agenda forward. And at the time of the Boston bombing, there was only really Alex Jones. There really weren't all these other channels real time taking stuff down. They started to, but he was the loudest on that one, and it definitely caught my attention. And at the time, there were so many anomalies to look over, but they all sort of assumed it was real, and that the Sarnoff brothers were patsies. But anyway, and it's not even ancient history.
Well,
But
I mean, it's these people don't exist.com. Have we ever really seen the Tsarnaev brothers ever in person? Like it's all caricatures or pictures. And it could be just AI. We don't know how long ago artificial intelligent photoshopping has occurred.
well,
So
the last
like,
time
a lot of that stuff is
Joker, his name was Joker Sarnoff. The last time Joker Sarnoff was
Joker.
in the news was on 3/4/2022, the day the new Batman came out, and he was in the news because his
Yeah.
death penalty was reinstated. I'm like, wait, you're reinstating the death penalty on the Joker the day of the Batman movie coming out. And in the Boston lockdowns after the bombing, the police were all in their Batman costumes, these SWAT uniforms. And that's when I realized Batman and the symbol of Batman is included in so many of these psyops. And of course,
The-
we've seen that with
yeah.
Christopher Nolan's films, constantly referencing these mass
I
shootings.
yeah, I vividly remember that before even there was like the theater shooting too for that movie. That the marketing that they did for that Batman movie was insane. I think they did a lot of the Joker. It was like the months leading up to that movie. A lot of like the Joker's pranks and stuff were like they tried to make them like real. And I love when Hollywood purposefully blurs the line between what's the movie and what's not. I think Lost. I brought this up with you too. Lost did this a few times in between seasons, and I think it's almost like a hint of the Blair Witch Project. If you remember way back in the day when Blair Witch Project came out, it was advertised as real. I think that was part of their marketing plan.
It was. You're right about that.
So let
They
people know
marketed
it was
that by
like,
leaving it open to
yeah,
speculation, so people are like, I think it's real.
I love that stuff. Yeah.
That was really clever, and yeah, that was also reality
So
TV. I think.
the Dark Knight did that.
I could see that.
But yeah, they did like all the bank robbery stuff. Like they had fake Batman pictures like posted in different towns, and the people dressed up as, oh, you know what? Damn, I don't think we ever talked about this here. I don't think you ever said this. They had like people dressed up as like Jokers and stuff all over the internet, and like have you ever talked about that? Because I don't think you have. That's definitely related to like the stuff that you kind of tend to talk about. I'll have to dig up some of that stuff because I know that their marketing was what was related to that. I don't even know what to search like online for that
It's something to go
because I probably haven't
down.
seen it since then.
I mean, I've been looking. Okay, you mentioned this shooting in Maine, and some of the big, what I
Yeah.
call guardrail channels, these controlled opposition types, are saying it's MK Ultra. He's
Hmm.
mind controlled. They said that about James Holmes, and the Batman shooter, the Joker shooter, and he had some involvement with DARPA and some type of research having to do with, I guess, adjacent to mind control. So they put that narrative out there at that time that this was a mind controlled assassin or
Oh my
something.
God, the whole main story is just so transparent to me at this point. Um, who's gonna prove that any of the people actually died? That's one thing. Now, I'm not saying it's like it probably didn't happen, but I'm just saying who's gonna do like the background search on these families to see that all of them, lost some, whatever. And then also, how do we even know if this guy actually exists? This card, guy. You know what I mean? It's the whole story. It's just so easy to fabricate and just put out there. And like the police could be searching for nothing, and then even the way he was found seems very unusual. And like his background story is very unusual. Nothing makes sense. Supposedly he was found in something like either a dumpster nearby like work or something like that, or a friend's like recycling plant or something. It sounds like a movie. That I feel like that's in a movie somewhere. And he like, I don't know, it was like supposedly like a suicide, two bullets to the head, and like or two shots to his body somehow. It's like who's shooting themselves twice, like.
Now, you might find this interesting. So
for like a suicide.
I looked at this, looking into this Joker thing. So I do recall the Joker Batman hype around that movie. And before James Holmes walks into The Dark Knight Rising and shoots everybody, there was a trailer for a movie called Gangster Squad that played before. And the trailer for Gangster Squad was later, they changed the scene from the movie because it had criminals coming from behind a movie screen and shooting up the audience.
Right.
So before the audience gets shot up, they watch an audience getting shot up. I mean, that whole
Wow.
scene was just replete with this
I
type of.
I remember you saying that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. See that's the trick that I think. See, it's fun. I hate now. I sound like a real jerk. Like it's in. I'll put it this way. It's interesting observing these things happening in real time. Now, it's the predictive capability that I think is important for us, and I want to continue to hone that. And I think you started bringing this up the last few episodes of IPS where now it's like, okay, this is like the anniversary of blah blah blah, and like, and lo and behold, we're actually starting to see some, repeats, like some of the things that are rhyming as time goes on. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So
10,
you know what?
10.6 was Modern
Yeah,
Warfare 3. The video game comes out, and I'm like, wait, on the eve of the Israel-Hamas thing, you have one of the most popular games, is it Call of Duty, or where
yeah,
like millions of people are now they're immersed in simulated war. That to me is obviously concurrent programming, just like if they had it on Netflix. Or here in the town I'm in, they show World War Z downtown, which has scenes that are reminiscent of what just happened. So this is a very coordinated thing, which is why I don't assume things to be real at all anymore. None of these atrocity stories get any
yeah.
rise out of me, except
Oh man,
it's like
yeah.
exciting in a way.
The Israel stuff is super interesting. Les Luthor isn't even like allowed near. By the way, he must have some brass cojones, thinking that he can just travel to a war and like record stuff. But I guess he wasn't allowed even on set in and around this new manufactured war. And I guess he wound up in Crete or something, and he was reporting there. And I guess it's like an island that's like partially owned by NATO or the United Nations or something like that. And it's all like overgrown. It hasn't been like touched in like decades. And he was kind of reporting on how it's probably like where they film, because a lot of all the militaries, all those like Palestinian military people, they like train there. So I guess that he was kind of saying that I guess they can use any set they want and record these wartime photos like anytime they want. I mean, how many years go by? Like you're just showing like an iPhone on the screen, and like the shape of the iPhone hasn't changed for years. So that, I mean, I'm just speculating here. Like, could that photo be taken like 2 years ago, 4 years ago?
Right.
That you know what
Yes,
I mean? So
exactly. Like there's this correlate. You find these relationships between drills and then the real thing happening later. And it seems like they do the drill or
mhm,
they shoot a movie. And this is hugely interesting to me. They shoot a movie
right.
that seems like that would have been the time to get all the key characters, actors, and resources in place to stage a like event. And someone today, Reverse History, sent me something very interesting. This is such an intriguing find. The Rodney King beating,
Oh yeah.
the beating, 1 minute, 19 seconds, 33 times hit with the baton. The guy who filmed it was actually filming Terminator 2, which was being shot on the same street. So he's shooting behind the scenes Terminator 2.
Oh yeah.
Then he walks down, he sees the beating later, and when the police take that tape from him, they actually have behind the scenes doing some of James Cameron's work. So this is a connection between Terminator, James Cameron, and the Rodney King event, which is just another level of interesting
Well,
connectedness when we look at James Cameron's fingerprints as a metascriptor. And I'm suggesting that psyop of the Rodney King beating was probably a James Cameron production.
that's the thing, Tim, is like my mind is blown with all this stuff. Like it's still, even after a very short few years of being in this, you know, on these channels, we'll say, it's so mind-boggling that that stuff has happened for years, and it's almost like, when did it begin? You know what I mean? So and that Terminator 2, that was like, or Terminator, whatever, that series, that's like 80s and 90s. So it's like, man, it's like 30, 40 years ago. So what's going on?
Yeah, yeah. And look,
It's kind of it's really crazy. So
it's intriguing. I think
but
Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator is a very significant character. The Terminator is the destroyer, and
yeah,
it symbolizes the nuke. It's all coming. The story. This is a story that's been written that is leading our collective narrative to these certain ends, and that's what we're witnessing. The word metascript is the only thing that can explain this. And
yeah,
when did it begin?
yeah.
1946, I guess, when they.
It's Yeah, it's funny you brought up nukes too, because I've been kind of mulling over how the cartoons that they provide for us. Whenever there's like a news article or that I find online about current versions of nuclear arms, they use similar like cartoons, just like the way satellites are presented to us, and I think that's something that's really telling, especially if there's another version of these channels where it's like, nukes, are nukes real? You know what I mean? Like that's a question. I mean, I think, for the most part, if you do enough digging, who knows? They might not be. Like it's just I don't know. It's almost like all this stuff is just meant to keep us hidden in our own homes, or just shaken in our britches, so we don't move.
That's a recurring
And
theme. We got lockdowns. They established it. We need a
yeah,
lockdown for the pandemic. Then we need a lockdown for possible fallout or the weather. And now we have lockdowns because of a
yeah,
shooter. But it's not just a shooter. It's a shooter who caught a mind virus. He caught the rage virus on disease X. He went on X. He got
yeah.
radicalized, and now he's doing a shooting. And the fact that it's the X that is being pointed as the cause is very significant here, because, of course, this can all be pinned on Elon Musk, and they're going to say this is why we can't have free speech, because the mentally ill
Right,
can't control
right.
themselves.
It is kind of interesting. We didn't foretell this month would have so much devastation, given that 10 and the letter X are related,
Oh, good
you
one.
know,
Yeah.
in some way. Yeah. Um, and I'm also curious. We always talk about November 3rd. Of course, that's a very special day to me. But for us, it's no, it's my birthday. So but for us, it's a much different day. I'm interested. What do you think is going to happen this year for
Okay.
like the beginning of November, like early November? Because it's kind of like a quiet month, right? It's just Thanksgiving and then 11/11,
Yes.
11/22. There's like those funny numbers.
I think it's going to be big. This is Godzilla's 69th birthday. I'll be watching Godzilla that day. But I literally think this. I think that all the predictive programming for the nuking of Seattle has pointed at a domestic violent extremist attack, which is already in the news right now. It's been foreshadowed in
Hmm.
Terminator 2, but Seattle 11/3, 11/3 is the Kraken date. And I first started looking at the Kraken symbolism when the Seattle Kraken emerged with a 1 minute and 13-second trailer, 11/3. 11/3 is the day of the One World Trade Tower, very significant date, but overall, I think if you were to point at a date that the aggrieved MAGA extremists that the FBI invented
Hmm.
would look at as the date to demonstrate their desire for retribution, at first I thought 6/11. That's Timothy McVeigh's death day. But I think 11/3. I think 11/3, if you're going to do a terrorist act to show your refusal to accept the election results, that would be the most symbolic date. So I'm looking at
Hmm.
11/3 as possibly the day that Godzilla takes out Seattle.
I can't even believe we're even still talking about election results, and how so many people have just continued not to question that stuff, and how the presidents or people like in power are selected rather than elected. And that's another question: is what do you think is going to happen next year with regard? Because a lot of that stuff is going to ramp up around January. Let's say like basic blue pill mainstream media stuff is going to be mostly about the election, the national elections. So I wonder, like, has there any chatter about like what do you think is going to? Some people started thinking that Biden will be selected one more time to be president. I think it's really interesting, but I don't know if that's even something we should even be talking about, because it really doesn't matter.
Well, Biden,
I don't know.
technically, they could have him last forever. I mean, silicon doesn't age, right? It's just a mask. But no, it's going to be
Oh yeah, like his
20.
mask falling off the other day. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
oh, when his chin,
It's
yeah,
like,
he had the
oh,
chin balls. What was that? I was like, okay,
the
like that.
yeah, the normie memes are just fantastic. They're like, I don't know. It's well, here's another thing, Tim. It's it's becoming really difficult to like talk about this with like other people. You can't really like talk about the stuff that we talk about to a lot of people. But sometimes it teases its way out, you know what I mean? Like in conversations, like, well, I don't know about this let's say the main shooter or like the Israel stuff. We don't really know what's going on. It's so chaotic. It's easy to take like a middle stance on this stuff. But have you ever been in a position, like, do you have any, thoughts or recommendations on, how, when you're talking to people, like, how do you bring a little bit of IPS to the forefront?
Yeah,
Do you ever do that in like real
I
life? Like maybe we were in like grocery shopping or something like that, and you're just talking to to the person behind the register or something like that. You know what I mean?
originally we started this term, which has been appropriated by everybody else in the whole flat earth thing. We called it flat smacking, and I stole it from the Westboro Baptist Church. They called it God smacking, and it's where you tell somebody something that is,
Smacking.
yeah, that's meant to be such a paradigm shock that leaves this look on their face like they got smacked. So flat smacking was kind of the same thing. And so originally I was like, hey, here's what we need to do. We need to paradigm shock people. And we had a number of people who are part of our group who would go out on the street corners outside of like ball games and just tell people the space station's fake. The Earth is flat. Nothing you can see on TV is true.
Oof.
Like we
Oof.
made that our main objective. And then that's how we got introduced to, we did the billboard, Research Flat Earth. And we were trying to communicate to the normies. And then Mad Mike Hughes, the Daredevil, joins us. So we spent a lot of time directly targeting the normies and reveling in the fact that you could see on their faces when you went beyond their frame of reference. And we called that flat smacked. And it was just kind of fun at first. But
Huh.
it caused a reaction. And I think that we've seen it. We've seen the reaction against what now they call dangerous misinformation.
Yeah, but it won't tip the needle. I mean, it won't cause someone to just immediately research flat Earth, as they say, or research fake nukes, or
It doesn't.
So
It doesn't. It doesn't. What it does, and
it's
this is
so
by
weird.
design. I think I read somewhere in like cult mind control, they talk about how this is something that even happens with
Yes.
certain evangelicals, where if a cult is proselytizing and they get rejected, it actually tells the cult that they're right. It kind of makes them shell up and they form a wall, us versus them. So when they send out cult members around the world to proselytize, winning people over is almost secondary to just building walls. So I realized it's not going to work, but we were doing it more as an experiment, a test. Let's see how the media responds. But these days, I look at somebody's frame of reference before we talk about anything. Like, oh, this person is a normie, so they believe this stuff is true, and you cannot disabuse them of it. It's like you can't get somebody to ditch their religion with facts. It's a different area
Right.
of cognition, belief versus knowledge. And so I look at the frame of reference and I'm like, okay, they're dreamers. I'm not going to wake them up.
We need I don't know how to word this the right way, but I almost want more different perspectives, because this is tough. This is tough, Tim. Doing a lot of research. And I know being drowned in the discords, threads and everything. It's super tough. Like, man, like talk about mind expanding information, but at the end of the day, there's still like little pockets of like science, history. Let's say like I would even go so far as to say like chemistry and biology, like never mind philosophy, philosophical science, like any of these realms of thought and research, we're just lacking. Like I wish we could just kind of wake different people up and just
Yeah,
be like, hey,
I
like
know what you mean.
question this thing, like, and because it'll help all of us, like
Look,
like just have a better like idea of like what's going on.
you're absolutely right, because I had said at the very beginning of this channel, there were people who said, don't do the billboard. You're going to cause ridicule. And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, the answers are not going to be found by the people on YouTube who are just conspiracy candy junkies. It's going to be found by people out there in the world who are in positions to know something. And then you have to have all these disparate people who know a little bit here, know a little there. And then the connections between this information will bring something out in the gestalt. So I'm like, no, you cannot form an echo
True.
chamber. So my intention here with the IPS think tank is to do cyber symposiums where we invite people from the outside world. So my very first one, I'm inviting a number of computer animators to examine some footage that I present them from the ISS. And I'm going to get some expert opinions on out of context video just to prove that the professionals will call it fake if it's fake, if they don't know it's coming from NASA. In other words, their frame of reference.
Nice.
But my plan is to go out into the world with this and to get out of the echo chamber. The whole idea of the think tank has always been to engage.
Yeah,
And we have
that's
to
the tough
engage.
part, is getting out of the echo chamber. There's a lot of people that still don't call in either too. So that's what bums me out a lot of times. There's a couple of good people that post in the threads and so forth that we have, and too bad that, because I think the audio version of this information is a lot more powerful. I mean, just down to grassroots here. I can like rip this audio from YouTube and have it, save it to my computer, whereas like the Discord thread, forget about it. Like, I don't even know how to unravel all that. That's
Yeah,
it's just so much.
I know what you mean. And
So
and we have a lot of great research, and you can see how the ideas are built up and how the pieces are put
yeah.
together. And what I'm doing with these cyber symposiums is I'm going to be basing it on input. So I'll be arranging for people to call in or to show up. So in other words, yeah, I really think that we have a lot of great content here, and there's a lot of great
Oh
researchers
yeah.
and a lot of people. Like, I want to talk to Les Luther again. I spoke to him like last year, and get some updates on his illusion warfare. He's really
Oh
advanced the
man,
game.
he's great.
Yep.
Yeah. hmm Hey, well, I wanted to say thank you for everything. Trying to do all this and stay consistent. I know it's really tough, and yeah, I just threw some a couple coins in the tip jar for you, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Hey, I appreciate it very much. Thanks for the coffee and for helping to maintain this channel. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think it's just going to get more interesting. So like, I have all the incentive I need to stick around. So thanks again for the call, and have a great evening.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Take care.
All right, and I think he makes a great point. Caller raises a great point. Let's get more callers in. Lean Dion said they didn't let Les Luther into Gaza. He's in Cyprus, which he suggests is a simulation area. Yes, exactly. Joseph Bender says, this guy your handler? No, I don't have any handlers. We are uncontrolled opposition. Controlled opposition and uncontrolled opposition. In fact, there isn't any uncontrolled opposition outside of the IPS. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, how you doing, Tim?
Hey, what's up? This is One Step Too Far.
Yep.
Hey, what's going on? What's your take on the world stage as it is presently arranged?
Well, that's a long-winded answer, but I think I actually wanted to ask you a couple of your opinions on certain things. Like one of the ways we can see the script, like it's kind of cliche, but like George Lucas, it rhymes. It's like an opera or whatever.
Right.
Well, it's like one of the hot topics on social media that people are fighting about with the Palestine-Israel thing is the burnt babies. And there's a couple of things. There's like, first of all, if it happens, then like, what's the problem with asking for proof? And if it's true, then like, why don't you just show the proof instead of castigating people as anti-Semites? But the biggest thing for me, and I think for a lot of people, is it reminds them of, if you remember the first Iraq war with the first Bush, it's like the babies in the incubators.
Oh yeah. Oh, and Naira. And you know what? This is the thing. The incubator story came out on the I guess it was 10/10, 1990. So 33 years to the day, we get the story of the 40 dead babies in Hamas. Like this is just
Exactly.
unbelievably scripted. Like, and you're right. If it was real, show us the babies. Shock me. I could say the same thing for any of these school shootings. Show me one
Oh,
photo.
and all the same people that want you to believe that them just like take them at their word, that's the proof, are like, don't look away. Look at the carnage. It's like, okay, well, show it to me. Don't show me like a 4-year-old clip of you guys actually going into a mosque and like shooting people on Ramadan and like throwing grenades in the room with women and children and then having a parade. 2 years ago, they did that at night on the holiest night of Ramadan and threw a friggin' parade in the middle of Gaza. But that's beside the fact, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I
It's
know.
just like
I
the
think
script.
you.
The script, it's like Marvel movies. They're like running out of things to put in the script, so they're
Yeah.
just like repeating it and then like farting into a wine glass and sniffing it like, oh, we're so good at this.
Yeah, it's terrible. And I'm thinking that we'll find the pictures of the real victims, the real dead babies, in the same filing cabinet where they have photos of satellites, like in space. Like they got to be in the same
Well,
safe.
interestingly, it's interesting that you bring that up for two reasons. I think we're going to find it in the same vault that we're going to find the very convenient video proof of like Timothy McVeigh exiting the truck without John Doe number two, which will obviously be AI because all the witnesses that either died or like refused to testify about John Doe number two, because guess who was the prosecutor during those cases? It was who's our attorney general right now?
Right now, let me see. Who is the Attorney General? Right now, it is. Looks like.
It's on the tip of my tongue. He was like up for Supreme Court under Obama.
There is Merrick Garland.
Yeah, Merrick Garland was the lead prosecutor in the case against McVeigh and his accomplishment, Terry Nichols.
Oh, really?
And when he was asked about, because Terry Nichols has like all of this information on John Doe number two, and like anytime the witnesses brought up John Doe number two and how they saw him with him, Merrick Garland, who's the prosecutor working for the state, would try and say objection and get it stricken from the record. He would keep trying to get the judge to get it stricken from the record so there was no mention of John Doe number two. And that's why I think with AI and stuff, like in him being attorney general, like it might just conveniently come up that there's video proof all of a sudden, all the video that disappeared, the video that
I see.
whistleblowers were murdered over, will show up.
Like retroactively patching in the holes. This is 1984 Ministry of Truth. And yeah, you know what? That's got to be entering the realm of possibility. Like we talk about what's fakeable. Is it fakeable that they could produce something that looks like evidence that was actually recorded at that time? Could they patch holes in their story? I
Right, and
think
think of
so.
how low grade the quality was. It was like 144p. You know what I mean? So like it's not going to be hard to erase a guy getting out of a truck.
Fascinating. And the significance of it right now, if you ask me, is of course Timothy McVeigh is like the OBL for the white nationalists, and now they're hyping up this white nationalist attack.
Exactly.
And I think the white nationalists are threatening the power grid, and they call themselves the base. And what does Al Qaeda mean? The base. So you're telling
The
me
base.
that the 9/11 and the 6/11, the domestic and the foreign terrorists, are both called the base? That tells you they have the
Well,
same writers.
and one of the big linguistic terms that has been planted into like young people's internet slang is based. Like, oh, that's base,
Wait a minute.
or like that
Based
guy's base.
is based a right wing thing too? Because if so, then that was planted by the feds. It had to have
It
been.
started as right wing, and then like the left wing tried to like co-opt it as like, oh, like we'll take their term, like it's based when it goes against them, that type of thing.
I see. I see. They can
And
keep
like
their
where did
woke.
it came basically out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Kind of like conspiracy theorists. Like it just kind of came out of like, what does it really mean? Like, oh, based in fact. Like, I mean, you could say stuff like that. Oh, baseline on the court. Like you could say all these kinds of things, but the fact that you could also say, well, oh, Al Qaeda or the white nationalist, the one that you brought up.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
then there's like
Absolutely.
ISIS, like ISIS. This like we took Trump no time to like get rid of ISIS, quote unquote. But like Obama created ISIS, but now ISIS is back and is a big problem. But like Al Qaeda's not because we gave them all this stuff, which is really like so. The economy's really bad. How does a country do better when the economy's bad? War. So we get directly back in wartime. The politicians line their pockets, and also the defense contractors, kind of like when Moderna got a jab contract when they're not in that business. Like the defense contractors also get the federal contracts to rebuild the places that they're blowing up.
And another reason we
So
need war is we need war because all of the military are brainwashed. Every person who's joining the military believes in weapons of mass destruction as seen on TV. And you don't go through that training and you don't exist in that closed system environment of a military base and believe anything's fake or believe any conspiracies. Maybe a little intrigue, but you're a true believer brainwashy. And they need
oh
war
yeah.
to maintain because I look at the sheer number of people who are in the military, the standing army, and they all go through the same basic worldview shaping program, and you need that.
Well, now it's a little bit different with all the the gender stuff that's going on, but that's kind of ancillary to what we're talking about. But you also brought up the with the proof, like the pictures of the space station. If you go to your Twitter right now, I tweeted you this when it came out, but it should come up in your mentions. Like it's just a link to the article. When I first tweeted it to you, I said it's all coming together because this was before all this shit popped off. It's an article, and it's like a legit, like from whoever the science people are. It's an article about how NASA is making contingency plans for the ISS coming down.
Oh yeah, here they are. They're
Like
planning on bringing it down to. And why down? Okay, so like if the Earth is the only place in the universe that has any life and everything else out there is just emptiness and then you have these stars which are just trash incinerators, why would you throw your garbage on Earth? Why wouldn't you just fling it out into space? I never
right.
understood that.
It's especially when they're spending billions of dollars to quote unquote land precisely on an asteroid, even though all the asteroids that are quote unquote deadly we can't notice in time. You notice how also with like weapons of mass destruction, well, we wouldn't be able to notice it in time, like that type of shit. But you can pinpoint land a mining, like your Bruce Willis in Armageddon, land like a mining crew on like a asteroid that you think has a bunch of minerals we need. You know what I mean? Like it's cobalt, so we can like fight slave labor and all this shit. It's like all these narratives coming together at the same time. We give Iran like $5 billion so that they can fund the attack that the IDF can ignore for 5 hours, so that we can basically get a Las Vegas situation. And the number keeps going up and up and up, and soon it's going to be 6 gazillion people died at the friggin' yeah, I don't want to go too far
I know
into
what you
that,
mean.
but
It's an
you know what I'm
egregious
saying.
look. It's come down to it's a war over who can get the most people to believe their bullshit, and it's all atrocity propaganda. The worst offender here.
No, I think it's not. I think that's what it used to be like when they first started it out, but I think they realized that they've lost the information war with the internet. They can't get it back. So this is really like the last ditch effort. It's kind of like with Antarctica or like the landing on the moon or like the atomic weapons. Like all these enemy countries all get together and they decide, oh well, you know what, we agree on this one thing. Like, oh, we agree that we don't want people going to Antarctica because then they'll start finding all the other continents where all the other rich people live. You know, that type of shit.
I think you're right about
Or
something.
they'll find
we crossed the
they'll
line.
find out about the nukes, like the what's the new nuke phrase, like the micro nuke,
Yeah.
which is basically means like they'll have an excuse to say, well, that was nuclear arms when like a general like IED goes off.
Right, exactly. And then they'll say there's fallout and there's radioactivity. And there's a pretty good movie with Nick Cage called The Humanity Bureau about how they used fake claims of nuclear fallout and radiation to lock everybody down. And you're not allowed to have the Giga reader thing that tells you when there's any kind of
Yeah.
It's like, okay, another excuse for the universal lockdowns, but
I mean, when they pull off the EMP thing soon, which is them just shutting the electrical grid down, they're gonna make ham radios illegal, you know, shit like that.
well, they're definitely setting the stage for some massive blackout. They've been doing
Something
this for some
crazy,
time.
yeah,
In fact, they say
a huge lockdown thing.
and they're going to blame it on white
And here's
nationalists.
what I think it is. I think they're doing this so they can, because you notice how we're fighting for democracy in Ukraine, but he's rounded up all his political opponents, he's thrown them in jail, and we're still fighting for democracy. First of all, we're not a democracy. The Founding Fathers built our Constitution based off the fact that they were warning us about democracy and how it was the end of everything, because it's the rule by the majority, which means the minority doesn't get a voice. But aside from all that, like, I think it's that they really don't think it doesn't matter due process or not. Trump's going to get convicted of all these charges, and then they're going to use that to say, oh, are you really going to vote for the guy that has umpteenth charges? And I think they're worried that people really are going to. And the last thing that they can do is do what Zelensky did and suspend general elections, even though we know there's elections, but suspend general elections and save face as they institute an even bigger police state.
Interesting.
That-
Interesting. I could see that being a path taken forward here. 91 charges, and I think that these are all fall guys. Like, I don't think Trump is a target of the deep state because he's rogue. I think he's a fall guy, and they're deconstructing.
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating. That's
He was a selected Manchurian candidate because they thought they could control him, and he went rogue. And now the people are behind him going rogue, and he's got an ego. He's seen the dead bodies. You know, he understands the cracks. You know, in the firmament, so to speak. You know, so I think that it's like that with a lot of people. Like, I'm surprised he's not dead yet. I think he's not dead yet because they need the boogeyman. What do they always need? They need the boogeyman, whether it's a virus or it's this or it's mass shootings. Like the guy who's a military age, like early 30s, like well built, looks like a SEAL, like handles his gun really well, and he's wrapped up in all his tactical gear and on multiple mags, multiple guns, like he's been in the field. And they supposedly catch the guy, and it's a guy who watches the Browns lose with a paper bag on his head in the stands, drunk off his ass every Sunday.
Yes. Anybody who has faith in political leadership is, following a Pied Piper at this point. They're pulling out. It seems like they're pulling out every single Illuminati card in rapid succession because of the internet. The internet has broken it and has taken the seriousness away from it. We've been hyped up for World War III all our lives, and conflict out there is meant to be really shocking, and the world's on the edge, and nobody's taking it seriously. It really is like a shouting match at this point. And
yeah, everybody's laughing at it. I mean, and they don't know what to do about it except for like take it to the extreme, you know. And since their extremes that they've been filling us with fear with are for the majority like fake shit. Like, they need to distract us with a bunch of shit. And, like, it's like they get the gay op going with the guns again. And it's like I heard an argument the other day about how, like, back to back, this girl was talking. She's like an anti-gun, pro-Palestine, whatever. You know, a lefty, like standard lefty politics, brainwash type thing. And she was saying that, like, she back to back put Uvalde and how the cops, the guys that we're supposed to trust with the guns, didn't do anything about it. But that's a good reason why the populace shouldn't have guns, because even the guys who we're supposed to trust with the guns, they don't get it done either.
Yes.
So basically, just like, you're supposed to die. If
The-
it's your time, you're supposed to die. It's crazy.
The good guy with the gun can stop a bad guy with a gun has been a staple of right-wing talking points from the beginning, and they've been trying to contradict that by showing the right wing, hey, look, not even good guys with guns can stop the bad guy with guns. It's futile. They're cowards. AR-15 is too much power in the hands of a
Well,
civilian.
that's why they're trying to make the guys with the guns doing this stuff the good guys now. You know what I mean? Like this guy who, like, I think your caller mentioned it before, like, this person doesn't exist.com or whatever. It's why, like, all of a sudden they got a military guy, you know, he's the NRA gun instructor, even though, forget about the times when the NRA gun instructor, like, has stopped a guy before he kills a bunch of people, like at a church in Texas. It's like, I don't know. It's all the narratives crashing together at once, and it's like they don't know what to do anymore because they've crisscrossed too many wires, and I don't know, man. It's getting crazy. Like, yeah, I mean, if nukes were real, we'd be done by now.
Yeah, exactly. And if school shootings were real, we would have seen real atrocities, and it would have really changed minds by now. But no, these are all events that weren't. It'll be
Yeah, I
the
get
new.
people mad every day when I say, no. Alex Jones isn't crazy because of Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook did not happen. Nobody died.
Yep, exactly. Well, hey, appreciate the call very much. And if you look on the screen really quick here, I took a picture the other day. We had total cloud coverage, just a sheet of cloud, very nice day otherwise. But I took a picture and I left part of a traffic light in the photo, and then I turned the photo upside down, and it looks exactly like the ISS and its arm gliding over the Earth. And if you look at that, I mean,
Well, there you go, Tim. You've seen it. You've seen proof now. Why don't you believe?
exactly. Like, I'm convinced that 90% of the stuff that's fooled people is optical illusions.
It all is, man. It all is.
Awesome. Well, hey, call
But I'll
back.
let you. I'll
Yeah.
let you go, brother.
Okay, call back anytime. Thanks again. All right,
Yep.
everyone. That is one step too far. Garrett Summers says, "What are they spraying exactly?" Well, look, I can show you a video that demonstrates how they actually fake, how they used to fake it. Now it's all CGI. But it used to be the case that they would record the sky and then flip the camera upside down. And then you would put the props in front of that footage. And it makes it look like you're looking from space down at the tops of clouds instead of being on the ground and looking up. And there was a pretty good video of that demonstrates this, where you have these astronauts who are dropping off one of their tanks down below. And you can see the tank there, but it's pretty clear that the tank that's supposedly falling is actually a blimp. And that they are holding a handheld camera inside of the space shuttle on the ground, and they're recording the sky. And it's given away a couple of times. And interestingly enough, you see a recovery jet. You know, whenever you have a blimp recovery jet, you'll see like a hook behind it. Is how you know it's there to recover the blimp. And you actually see in a NASA video a blimp recovery jet claiming the tanker, the tank that was supposedly falling down to the Earth. They whited it out, but the footage is there. It's all about an optical illusion. And if again, I'm looking at the screen here, and I cannot tell how this is different from the Earth as they show us from the ISS, and it's literally just a photo of the sky upside down. And this also explains why whenever they show you the Earth from space, it's planet cloud. It's like, where's the continents? Where's the cities? They only show you that at night when it's obviously, CGI. Okay, a couple other Illuminati cards have been thrown out there. Glenwood Springs, Colorado, a 22-year-old. Again, it's been 22 years since 9/11. Lots of 22s out there for some reason. Dressed in tactical clothing with patches, dead at an amusement park called Caverns Adventure. Heavily armed, semi-automatic rifle, handgun, multiple magazines, and he had body armor, and a helmet and IEDs. Apparently, you had this would-be terror attack. I guess it was foiled because he killed himself instead of doing it. According to reports in the Washington Post, the armed man killed himself instead of carrying out an apparent plan to shoot up a mountaintop amusement park in Colorado. Colorado's a center for a lot of the psyops. Recently, we've been talking about Littleton and the connections from Littleton to Lewiston, the shooter in Maine, and how he shot up a bowling alley. Bowling for Columbine, shoots up a bowling alley. Bowling for Lewiston. And the main victim, who was on the news while the shooter was still on the loose, the girl whose leg was grazed, is pictured holding a bowling ball with a globe on it, just painted like a globe. I'm like, that's interesting, because Bowling for Columbine has Michael Moore holding a bowling ball that looks like a globe. James Fatzer says the shooting in Maine is part of a long sequence of staged events to justify taking our guns. I think he's wrong. They're not staging shootings to take our guns. They're never going to take the guns. They're staging shootings to keep people terrorized, trauma-induced mind control, and to maintain the schism in society, left and right. Black Hebrew Israelites are now battling the pro-Palestinians in Chicago. Nobody got hurt. It's just another street riot. I wonder how Ronnie and Johnny with Event Skeptics are handling this. They're Black Hebrew Israelite flat earth simulationists, and they worship Yahweh. I think there's a lot of crossover. I didn't see them there in the fray. Dark Knight Rises, we talked about this. James Holmes behind Batman on the cover is a bat as a phoenix. The burning bat as a phoenix motif introduced by Christopher Nolan, and it foreshadowed 2020 and our reset. Burn it down, build back better. A phoenix, and the phoenix symbolism was really all over 2020, but the bat as phoenix, because the bat was the catalyst for the burning everything down. Of course, we're talking about the underheated bat soup. Okay, we have out there in Switzerland, they're mailing iodine. The government is mailing iodine tablets to 5 million residents in case of a nuclear disaster, and they're saying, take at the request of authorities. So my question for the anti-vaxxers, are you going to, like Exalt's in the chat, are you going to refuse the iodine after the nuke? Are you going to spend the next 5 years talking about how iodine has nanobots and COVIDs in it and we shouldn't take it? Is every affliction that the population has after iodine therefore caused by iodine? Check this out. This is so intriguing. We've been talking about Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, and his face all over 9/11 with collateral damage. Look at this, the Trumpinator. He'll be back in 2024. Trump as the Terminator. Now, the reason why this is interesting, for a couple of reasons, but primarily, the Terminator is the destroyer. The destroyer is what Abaddon means. Revelation 9/11, Abaddon, the destroyer, and Trump is a bad Don. He's the head of this thing when it goes down, when it's blamed on the MAGA extremists. And he was characterized as a bad Don once they started bringing him into the courthouses as a mafia Don. And I'm saying that he is Abaddon. He is the destroyer. That this general narrative about this nuke that's going to hit America, likely Seattle, and it's correlated, of course, with T2, Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's interesting here. Anyway, the Trumpinator. And then also, of course, if you go into the symbolism with Terminator 2, he gets that head wound where he's got this pretty conspicuous one eye symbolism, which could be foreshadowing Trump's coming head wound. If you're not familiar with that, it's one of the most, like, look, you could look back and say, how did we miss 9/11? So many movies were predicting this exact scenario. There were so many hints. Well, pretty soon, whenever this thing goes down with Trump, you're going to say, how did we miss this? It's pretty incredible how many times he's been symbolically hit, sacrificed. Headshots have been foreshadowed. I think that also explains a lot of the Kennedy association with Trump, with the whole Q movement. I think they're trying to recreate that particular type of a psyop. And right now, Donald Trump is Biff Tannen. He is in the Biff Tannen phase of his character, and it's Biff Tannen who dies. Some more connections here. Could it be, this is Matman. Is it odd that before Matthew Perry died, he posted a Batman picture and called himself Matman? He had a t-shirt, "Could I be more vaxxed?" 888 days before his death. When you get into the numbers and the days between and the time between dates, there is quite a lot more here. But I'm going to do some digging. I'll put it all together in one article and we'll get the best information that we can. Also, they've rewritten history. The dinosaurs were actually killed by a dark winter. How the apocalypse led, the rock from the sky narrative is still there, but they're saying that the asteroid kicked up a big cloud of pulverized rock dust, starved plants of sunlight, but more recent investigations are focusing on sun-blocking soot from the initial impact, subsequent global wildfires, and long-lived sulfur aerosols released. Again, this is part of the general I can't breathe psyop. I can't breathe, Gaia can't breathe, because of course, capitalism, toxic airborne events. Also, tomorrow is Halloween. It'll be the 42nd anniversary of the first wave at the Husky Stadium, October 31st, 1981. If you look at the origin of the wave in stadiums, there's a number of different places competing over who started it. But I think the most believable one is the Husky Stadium, where they did a simulation, a drill for the bombing of Seattle. And it was featured on PBS episode 113, The Bombing of Seattle, which they removed after I talked about it for like a year. But again, tomorrow is the 42nd anniversary. Last year, they were doing drills, and they said if there's some kind of a earthquake in Seattle of a 7.5 magnitude, we'll have, quote, 42-foot waves. The number 42 has been consistently associated with blackouts. Remember, the 7/13, 1979 and 7/13, 20, was it? I think it was, let me get these exact dates. 7/13, the New York Manhattan blackouts. 42 years apart to the date. We're talking about, not only were these blackouts that were exactly 42 years apart, but they put 42,000 people in the dark from 42nd Street on. And that date, July 13th, is interestingly 113 days from 11/3. But yeah, it was the 77 blackouts, and then exactly 42 years later to the day, the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center and the southern tip of Manhattan were plunged into darkness on 7/13/77. So that's a fascinating connection there. The Twin Towers on. But then exactly 42 years later, on the same day, we had a blackout. The New York City blackout of 77 happened 42 years ago today. 42,000 people in the dark, 42 2nd Street on. This is just one example, but I can point to dozens of examples. This one was actually correlated with the Son of Sam shootings, fascinatingly. SOS. Other interesting connections there as well. I need to get back into mind mapping some of the stuff. I'm just pointing out that there's a lot of blackout stuff being foreshadowed, being intimated, and we're going into the election cycle for determining who's going to be the president number 47. And remember, Super Bowl 47 was the Blackout Bowl, which I think is predictive of what is about to happen. Portal Complex says that was his 119th post on Instagram. And then we're in the World Series 119. And we brought up Rodney King and his 1 minute 19-second beating. 119 is a reference also in Genesis to the fall of the Tower of Babel. And 9/11 has, Revelation 9/11 has some connotations that correlate to the fall or the sinking of the Twin Towers. And the Twin Towers sinking, the Titanic sinking, the Tower of Babel, the West sinking, these are all part of the same set of symbols. It's all leading to the big one. Again, yeah, President Bush threw the first pitch at the World Series last night. The last time Bush threw was right after 9/11, right before a major war. Sure, it's just a coincidence. All right, this has been great. Thank you all for the calls. Lean Dion says Trump 45-47 is 9/11 as well. Yeah, Trump even has a hat with a 45 and a 47 on it. Think about that. If the next major 9/11 event involves this scenario with Trump, it's right there on his head, 9/11. And someone just gave him, God, there was so much here about Trump and this thing with the dramatic Antichrist Revelation 13 head wound. It's going to be biblical. And it's not going to not happen, FYI. Predictive programming is part of a contiguous story. They're not making it up as they go. If it's in the script, it's in the script. We may not know the exact year, but look, we were looking at 11/3 in 2019. And then we said, no, the big one in Seattle is going to happen on 3/11, since it didn't happen on 11/3. And what happened on 3/11? Exactly. Ground Zero Seattle. And patient zero for COVID came down with the sickness on 119. 119 is also the date that Donnie Darko was released, a movie about planes falling from the sky. It contains a lot of the same 9/11 predictive programming, 2020 predictive programming, and the director of Donnie Darko's, the director's father, Donnie Darko's director, his father worked on the Viking Mars rover. So he's making movies for NASA, and his son makes movies for the PSYOP Entertainment Complex. It just shows you how it's a very small circle of individuals at the top of the Illuminati dung heap. Anyway, this is One-Eyed Jack in the Shells, just a bowl cut away crisis actor for hire. Thanks for the calls, thanks for the chats. Same time tomorrow, likely earlier. Thanks, Harmon. Appreciate that. Over there on Rofkin, and those of you on Rofkin, I'll be live there as well in the future. So Infinite Plane Radio on Rofkin.
Another angry white kid, just about kept away. Greta's going to be pissed. away. Another angry white kid. Just